I would like to enter a new word into the lexicon here at IHIP News, and it's called Islamopocracy. It appears that there is blatant and breathtaking hypocrisy surrounding Islamophobia. And Donald Trump is never quite called out for when he pals around with terrorists. And anytime a Democrat does it, it is this stage 5 meltdown based on lies, because Democrats, in fact, don't pal around with terrorists the way that the president of the United States does. Let's read this tweet and headline that came out. Trump is welcoming Ahmed al-Shara, a former leader of al-Qaeda who was behind 9/11, who murders Christians in Syria and had a $10 million bounty on his head. He'll be welcomed at the White House today. Only the best people. And so this is really, really fascinating to me on the foothills of all of the Islamophobia that was laser focused on Zoran Mamdani, all of the Islamophobia that it was laser focused on Barack Obama, as they call Barack Hussein Obama, to be more Islamophobic as they could possibly be. But here is Trump on this meeting with this, I guess, reformed jihadist. Play the clip.
Joining the anti-ISIS.
Yeah, you can expect some announcements on Syria. We want to see Syria become a country that's very successful, and I think this leader can do it. I really do. I think this leader can do it. And people said he's had a rough past. We've all had rough pasts, but he has had a rough past. And I think, frankly, if you didn't have a rough past, you wouldn't have a chance. He gets along very well with Turkey.
Okay. So as you can see, he sees, somebody having a rough past as being a prerequisite for being able to do business. The more corrupt you are, the more welcome you are in Trump's orbit. Even if you were a former jihadist, if you're willing to be corrupt, to exploit people, to enrich yourselves and enrich your buddies, you're all in with Kanks. And this brings me to the work at the Anti-Defamation League. And it's run by a gal named Mr. Greenblatt. And the Anti-Defamation League has been so incredibly hypocritical on absolutely everything. They seem to prioritize anti-Semitism based on lies over real threats of anti-Semitism. And they have sought refuge in Donald Trump and his movement's place. And every time I see a Nazi, and I'm talking about a real Jew hater, they seem to always be anchored in the Big Ten of MAGA. And the far right Jewish groups that have sought refuge with MAGA is just breathtaking to me, because I grew up in a red state, and the most anti-Semitic people I've ever met are white WASPs, particularly white evangelical Christian WASPs that have this apocalyptic script that they need for Jewish people to fall into. And what a fool's errand to think that somehow these bigots, this party formed on bigotry, is somehow going to provide you cover. And so first, let's play the video of Greenblatt discussing on Morning Joe Zoran Mamdani's victory. Play the clip.
Young man, and if he's 34, I can call him a young man. He won like the greatest landslide probably in New York history. I mean, certainly in recent times. And he used that moment to say that he will fight anti-Semitism in New York and stand shoulder to shoulder with his Jewish brothers and sisters.
So again, I'm going to judge him not on what he says in a speech, but on what he does over time. This morning, and I will tell you, I've gotten so many calls from Jewish New Yorkers who are alarmed. Their kid was harassed in college. Their child was bullied in K through 12. Their synagogues vandalized. So here's what ADL is doing right now. If you are a Jewish New Yorker, we have your back, and we will hold Mamdani, Mayor-elect Mamdani, accountable. Look, it's not about politics. This morning we launched a tip line at adl.org NYC. So if you are Jewish and you experience anti-Semitism where you work or where you worship or where you live, we want to know so we can track it.
Well, and
look, I tell you,
there has been anti-Semitism.
Okay. All right. Listen. Now do Donald Trump. Like, this is a guy who is constantly, every chance he can get, going into business with the Saudis, with the Qataris. And you're willing to go along with all of that and fixate on the brown-skinned man that links all universal human rights together, that doesn't prioritize one marginalized group over the other. And that's the problem with the ADL. They have prioritized Jewish safety over the safety of all others. And in fact, they're linked. And in the biggest faceplant ever, you have gone to seek refuge with a man who is constantly making excuses for Nazis. Put up Mehdi Hassan's tweet here. Mehdi Hassan says, Greenblatt, he quotes Greenblatt, and he says, "We've certainly never had an elected official like this before." And Mehdi responds to that, "Well, there is a guy who told American Jews their country is Israel, told neo-Nazis they're very fine people, hosted a Holocaust denier for dinner, called Jewish voters stupid, hired open anti-Semites for his administration, and said the only people he wanted counting his money were the guys in yarmulkes. That person is Donald Trump, not Zoran Mamdani." And Greenblatt warmly welcomed Trump's election victory last year. I have seen more swastikas at a Trump rally or at a Trump boat parade than I've ever seen anywhere else. And the fact that the ADL constantly prioritizes anti-Semitism as the only thing that's rising under this regime is so inherently dangerous, because there is rising racism, and there's also rising anti-immigrant sentiments. And in these anti-immigrant sentiments, this administration is doing to immigrants what Hitler and the Nazis did to Jews. So I would think, if I were the head of the ADL, I would be whistleblowing about the Supreme Court ruling that you could racially profile somebody and detain them. I would be whistleblowing that nobody knows where the 1800 people that were in Alligator Alcatraz are. I would be whistleblowing about the people that were sent to CCOT. I would be whistleblowing about ICE agents in masks going to schools and detaining people. But instead, you have a Mamdani monitor, a guy who you're so scared of, who has said he is committed to fighting anti-Semitism, which is more than Donald Trump has ever said. But something really terrible is happening with this whole argument, and it is that they are using this, quote, rise in anti-Semitism because people on college campuses see Israel committing a genocide, and they're speaking out against it. And at the ADL, they show no daylight between the war crimes of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel and Jewish people living in America. And there should be all the daylight in the world there. And so they are banking their safety with a group of people who absolutely make room all around their political party for anti-Semitic voices. And it's just fascinating to me that the ADL is not leading point on all of the Nazi-like provocations that are coming out of this administration. But instead, they're worried about Zoran Mamdani, and they are going to have a Mamdani monitor. No mention of all of the people that are separated from their families, which really gives Hitler Nazi vibes. So I would think that that would be their main point. And then moving along here, you have again another person that is now saying there's a rise of anti-Semitism, which I'm not going to deny that, because I've definitely seen it, and I've seen it on the right far more than I've seen it on the left. Let's play the clip of Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports.
I've seen in my own experience, just being Barstool, the difference between how much hate I get. I mean, occasionally you get, hey, or Jew or whatever. It's every day now. Like, there's a definitive shift in what's going on. So yes, now I for me, being a Jewish person, like you got to step up. You're kind of someone people look up to in the Jewish community. You have to be like, all right, this is not normal, with the guys. People are coming in with real hate.
Okay. What I have to say to Dave Portnoy is if you engage on your websites in homophobia and you engage in misogyny and you engage in anti-immigrant sentiments, you leave everybody vulnerable because all of these human rights are connected. If you try to prioritize one over all of the others and you go to seek refuge with Donald Trump, you're going to get fucked. Period. They have a white nationalist vision that they are acting upon as rapidly as possible via Project 2025. So if you are prioritizing Jewish safety over all other marginalized groups and you are seeking refuge in the MAGA movement, you're going to get fucked. And I just think it's important that when we talk about human rights, that we talk about them universally. And nobody has done this better than Zoran. And because he's Muslim, they're so terrified and they can't have it both ways. You can't say Zoran Mamdani is this jihadist, terrorist commie, but also at the same time, he campaigns in gay bars and he goes to the gay pride parade and carries a trans flag, the most marginalized of all the letters, LGBTQ. The T are bullied by this administration. So Zoran links all universal human rights. Greenblatt and Portnoy go to the most racist group of people this country has seen since the civil rights movement, and they are seeking refuge there. While Greenblatt and Portnoy are not standing up for these marginalized immigrants that are being treated by this administration the same way the Nazis in the early days treated Jewish people. And guess what Hitler did, you guys? He threw in the gays, he threw in women, he threw in people that didn't agree with him. So you just don't have credibility to speak on this issue. And so since you're going to speak about a rise in anti-Semitism, I want to say as a person that wants to advocate for Jewish safety, I want to say, I hear you. And I want to do my part in making sure that we do not feed anti-Semitic tropes or language, and we create a space in this country where universal human rights are connected. And I would like to point out to Mr. Portnoy and Mr. Greenblatt that there has been a rise of sexism and misogyny, so much so that many people surrounding the MAGA movement, one guy in particular who is the preacher of Pete Hegseth, are calling for the dismantling and the overturning of the 19th Amendment. And these echoes are getting louder and louder and more persistent. And the internet is a very unsafe space for women like Angie and me to come and do our work. The death threats, the sexism, the misogyny is off the chain. We don't talk about it a whole lot because we're here to connect what's happening to women with what's happening to Jewish people, with what is happening to Muslim people and LGBTQ plus, and on and on. And I don't prioritize one group's safety over anybody else's safety because I see who the problem is and what the problem is. All right, listener, let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor, Simply Safe. Simply Safe is a real security because it can stop crime before it starts. And I know you think that sounds crazy, but let me tell you how they do it. Traditional systems react after someone is already inside. That's way too late. Simply Safe is different. It's proactive. They have live agents actually confront potential criminals while they're still outside before they break in or commit a crime. It keeps your home, family, property, whatever is important to you, it keeps it safe. And our listeners can get an exclusive early access to Simply Safe's Black Friday sale where they can save 60% on any new system. This is our biggest deal of the year. There will never be a better time to get real security for your home. So go to simplysafe.com/ IHIP. Again, that is simplysafe.com/IHIP. So I want to play you a clip from MAGA pastor Dale Partridge. In these clips, this rise in misogyny, this rise in sexism is every bit there, step in lockstep with the rise in anti-Semitism. Play the clip.
Good that women can vote in America? I don't think so, and here's why. Nearly every legalized moral atrocity of the last 100 years was made possible by the female vote. Abortion and homosexuality would likely still be illegal if not for the female vote. Mass immigration in the welfare state rode on the backs of the female vote. Nearly every modern Democrat, including Obama and Biden, were elected because of the female vote. Even last night, the new Muslim New York City Mayor Mondami won specifically because of the female vote. The 19th Amendment has been a moral and political tragedy for America, but why? Women were not made to lead, but to follow and to feel. This is God's design, and it's good within.
Okay, I've heard enough. So what I want to say to Mr. Portnoy and Mr. Greenblatt is, if you think the driving forces behind MAGA, which is the Heritage Foundation, which are these people that you're seeing here, if you think they give a shit about Jewish safety, you are wrong. You are a part of their rapture prepping apocalyptic delusions. They believe the Jews need to be in Israel in order for Jesus Christ to come back so that Jesus can then commit genocide on all of the Jews. These people are inherently pro-male, specifically pro-white nationalists. So when you start playing patty cake with these people, and you don't think for a second that they're going to turn the knives on you, you're wildly mistaken. You're not going to be special. So if you want to have credibility and build a coalition against bigotry, include everybody in it. Include the rise of misogyny, include the rise of sexism, include the ever dangerous and disgraceful, very Nazi-like movement that's going on in this country right now with ICE agents and this anti-immigration bigotry. I would think the ADL and the Portnoys would be screaming the loudest to this administration about how eerily familiar this feels and how dangerous it is, and how Hitler didn't just stop at the Jews, that he threw everyone in. So if you think Trump is somehow going to make a carve out for you, or you think the people at the Heritage Foundation who are playing patty cake with Tucker Carlson and other anti-Semites like Nick Fuentes, if you think they're going to make a carve out for you, you are wildly, wildly mistaken. And I want to leave you all with this. Kylie, pop this up. A man ran to the Broadview ICE facility today, searching for his wife of 5 years. They were following the legal process, showing up for her court case, when ICE took her to another room and disappeared her. He tracked her phone to Broadview, where the signal cut off. Police told him to just look up her name online. He sat in a parking lot, weeping, confused, with no answers. And so I am mystified that the people that are worried about anti-Semitism, which I worry about all forms of bigotry, are not screaming the loudest for that guy sitting in that parking lot right there. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of the criminal activity and the denial of due process and humanity that this administration has taken place in. So you have no credibility when you endorse this guy, when AIPAC funds this fascist regime to the tune of $350 million ballpark, and you think that Dave Portnoy, that you can say homophobic jokes and misogynist jokes, and then all of a sudden say, oh, wait, I'm seeing a rise of bigotry. All of those forms of bigotry are connected, and you have to understand that. And the person that understood that won a mandate was Zoran Mamdani. He is not an anti-Semite. He doesn't favor one group over another. He believes in universal human rights. And that is what the majority of Americans have got to understand. You're not going to be special. You're not going to get a carve out. At some point, all of these knives will be turned at you. Even the oligarchs think they're so special. And if they were to do a little reading on what happens in Vladimir Putin's dictatorship / oligarchy, they would find out that even they are not special. So if you want to play patty cake with MAGA and then get on the news and lecture us about bigotry, you can fuck off because you have zero credibility. All right, that's all I have for this episode. I'll be back with pumps later with more news.